we want to make money off of this. And they actually have a program that's so successful now, they're generating several $100,000 of revenue each year over what they need, and other departments are pulling from their fund. I really like that. The economics major in me loves that. That's just some good thinking there. And they actually recover a lot of glass through their drop-off programs too, so they're successful on both fronts there. I had to include Kansas City because we were one of the first cities to remove glass from single stream, and this was entirely a decision made by the processor, the MRF. They said it wasn't working, it was gumming up their equipment, it was a negative value, and they were tired of it. They pulled it, people were not happy, people could not recycle glass in a real way in Kansas City for 5 or so years. This is where Mike and everyone at Boulevard came in, and when we set out over 100 of our purple bins, our goal is really to make them within maybe 5 minutes or so of anybody in the metro area. And we really want people to do it while they're doing an errand. We want them to recycle while they're doing an errand. So we have partnerships with grocery stores and liquor stores mostly. We are definitely willing to put them other places, but the lion's share of our bins are somewhere that people are probably going to buy their glass. And so they can bring it back and it works super nice. The farm restaurant program, we have slowly grown it throughout the years. We use small containers, and we are maybe about 10% of the glass that we recycle from Kansas City is now coming from businesses, so that's pretty cool too. I wanted to throw in our friends from Salt Lake City, Momentum Recycling. They're kind of a sister company, or we share a lot with them, and they actually partnered with Salt Lake City to offer an optional curbside glass pickup. It's a subscription service. It's managed through the city water bill, I think. So it's fairly easy to administer. And those who want to do it can opt in. Those who don't can't. So they actually, I think they've gone up to 5,000 households is the last I heard. Something like that. Several thousand households. It's been kind of a steep climb for them, I'll say that. But they're doing this in a very clean way, and they're letting residents opt in to what they would like to do. So we really like their program. So last slide, what's best for Fayetteville? We have no intention of coming in and saying do this or do that. What we would advocate for is to continue to collect glass separately and recycle it in a clean way. There's a lot of reasons for this, but it's important to make sure your program is economically viable for years and years and years and years to come. We also think it's really important to think beyond just diversion. Anyone can throw things in a bin, and that's what most programs measure. They're shooting for a certain level of diversion. Portland and most of the state of Oregon, they've flipped that to think about recovery. How much of this material is actually recycled? And by recycled, we mean used to make new products. So we really encourage people to think in those ways, and it really kind of changes the way you think about programs and what is the right thing to do, especially when glass is really the tough one. It really is. But it helps to think about that, and then keeping glass separate is always going to give you the highest recovery. So I think that's all I got. We're happy to take a lot of questions.
I had one final thought. So I had mentioned early on that I was up in Washington, D.C. last week. So we've just formed, or in the process of forming, a new group for national glass recycling efforts, and it's called the Glass Recycling Coalition. And it's a mixture of waste hauling companies like Waste Management and Republic and big waste haulers, glass manufacturers, glass processors like us, other interested parties, fiberglass manufacturers. So all these groups are coming together to try to find a way to more effectively recycle glass, because it's commonly known throughout the industry that the current system is not working. It's really not working at all. And I encourage you, if you haven't done this, if any of you are Google savvy, to go onto Google and set up a Google alert to send you every day an email, just type in glass recycling, that you want an alert on that, and I guarantee you every day, because I do it myself, every day I get a story about how single stream is broken, it's not working, something needs to change. So one of the common phrases that the waste or the MRF operators use is that there's no market for the glass, that's why they're taking it to the landfill. I can tell you that is patently false. All these manufacturers want more and more glass, they want more recycled content, they save lots of energy and don't emit lots of greenhouse gas when they use recycled content. So when they use the cullet, they get all of these great environmental benefits. So what's broken is they don't send the glass to the manufacturers because it's too dirty. That's why it has to go to the landfill. And it's too dirty because, as you can see from that sample I held up, it's nearly impossible to separate the glass out of that pile when it comes into the door. So this is really the fundamental problem with the curbside or the single stream collection. It's just making the glass too dirty and then also contaminating the other materials. One other story about economic viability, I think it's a really important one. It's something that goes back to Boulevard Brewing Company, and one of the things that we did, in 2010, right after Ripple Glass was launched, we decided now is the time for us to really put our money where our mouths are and start a zero landfill program for the brewery. So we had the glass recycling in place, we had recycling options for all of other things, we did a waste characterization and determined what the food waste quantity was, so we got an organics program together, and then we went to zero landfill in 2010. One of our goals out of that program, one of our wishes, I don't want to say goals, one of our wishes out of that program was that it not cost more than doing the wrong thing, putting it all in the landfill. That's what we hope. Just don't cost us more, and then we'll be able to keep it going. But what we found, actually, was we flipped the whole darn thing on its head. We went from spending, let's say it was $25,000 a year on waste services to making $25,000 a year on all of our recyclables. So we had a $50,000 swing, which was directly impacting our economics of the brewery. So doing the right thing, there are benefits to doing the right thing in the right way. So I just encourage you all to think about it that way. And when you recycle, just like what we saw from Olathe, they actually are making money on their recyclables because they're doing it the right way. They took the long view of it, and they made the decisions to put them in that right direction. So with that, now let's take some questions. Yes, ma'am.
I want to make sure I understand. There is no market for aluminum, paper, plastic.
There's great markets for aluminum and paper and plastic.
Okay.
They're just a little depressed right now. The economics are poor because manufacturing is down related to the economy. But there still are very viable markets for all those materials.
And if contamination is a problem with glass, it probably would be for all those other things too, right?
It absolutely is. Right. Exactly. I'm only in the glass world really, so I know what the contamination problem is there. I deal with it every day. I don't know what it is so much. I've heard anecdotal reports about it, so I can't give you hard numbers, but it definitely is a problem. And especially with paper mills, when they're making the pulp and all that, and they have to run through their systems, it really grinds the equipment down and creates great difficulties. Yes, sir.
I had a question about a lake.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about the success of that program. How would you compare the two communities?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, so the question is about Olathe, Kansas, and the success of their program and how we compare the two communities. So I can tell you, I used to live in Olathe, and my wife was the solid waste manager there in the old days before we started Ripple, so I know it very well. Olathe, Kansas has about 150, maybe 180,000 residents now, so they're a little bit larger than Fayetteville. They don't have a college, so they're a little bit different in probably the diversity of the population. Maybe skews a little bit older, middle class, maybe in that way. And there might, I don't know about the geographic part of it, but certainly they're a little bit larger. But what they did have at the time, and it was 2009, 2010, because I was in direct communication with the solid waste manager, they did curb sort. They did curb sort, and they wanted to be sure of it because it was costing them a fortune. The amount of time they were spending at the curb with, at each individual house was really a problem. So they had to do something about it. They knew that they couldn't go to Okay, so back up for 1 second. Defenbaugh was their processor for their MRF materials, for their recyclables. Defenbaugh wasn't accepting glass in their mix, so they knew that they couldn't automatically just put glass into their system. So they had to find another outlet for glass. They wanted to get away from curb sort. We were effectively the only option. Ripple was the only option. So at the time, right after we got launched in end of 2009, they said, okay, now it's time for us to go ahead and roll out a Ripple bin program in the city and get rid of the curb sort for the glass. And then they went to single stream for everything else. So they put one bin program, all the recyclables except glass went in it, and they didn't have to curb sort anymore. And then all the glass went to the Walmarts and the Price Choppers and all the groceries and other places to drop off the glass. Did that answer your question?
I have a follow-up.
Okay,
So,
all right.
I looked at the 2014 Census Bureau, and there are about 125,000 people, population of 2014, and there's less than 10,000 college students within a 20-mile radius.
Okay.
I think we would see something different here in Fayetteville with the large amount of glass produced by college communities.
Well, having once been a college student, I don't think I consume the high-end beer that goes in the glass bottles these days. But I don't know. I honestly, maybe Michelle.
I mean, Lawrence is a very good analogy.
Yeah, Lawrence. What was the population of Fayetteville? You said is it
80 something?
80. Okay, so Lawrence, Kansas is about the same size. It's around 80,000, and it has the college. It's about 20,000 students. So very similar, probably demographics and whatnot. So I would expect it to be similar. The thing they don't have is that curb sort. They didn't do that before. It was all drop-off. But they were collecting a similar amount in 4 or 5 drop-off locations. They were collecting a similar amount of glass to what you're collecting today here in Fayetteville. So maybe that helps quantify it a little bit.
Mike?
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I just want to clarify something. Are they doing dual stream or single stream in Olathe, Kansas?
Olathe is doing...
Olathe.
Yeah, Olathe is doing single stream
It's
without
not-
glass.
It's not containers, which could be plastic containers,
You got
metal
plastic,
containers.
aluminum, paper, cardboard.
Paper's in there.
Everything.
But so you guys are
Except
not,
glass.
but you guys are not speaking to contamination for the paper industry or the plastic industry or the metal industry, right?
I am not.
Because I'm hearing from those industries, they don't like single stream because the liquids drip, the papers get stuck to them, the paper bale gets busted open, and they find that there are containers in there as well. So I just want to be very clear, I'll be doing other education programs about dual stream, which means your containers, plastic containers, metal containers are in one bin, and your fiber, which is paper, is in another. We'll be doing some education programs about that as well.
Yeah, like I said, I can't really speak to those issues with the other materials, only to the glass. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask a question, please, about our collection.
Okay, we have city staff over here. Isn't that great?
Pass the microphone over.
I know when I put out bottles and cans, the guy separates them all. Where does the contamination come in after they get off of that truck?
Brian, could you mind speaking to that?
So,
Or Terry, somebody?
I'm Terry Geller, I'm the Transportation Services Director for the city. Recycling trash is one division I manage. In our system, there's not a lot of contamination because we separate it all right there when we drop it out of the trucks once it reaches our MRF,
What is the percentage, about 2%?
somewhere in that neighborhood.
And
We're
Little Rock was
98%.
18% when they started their single stream program?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was 18%.
But, okay, I'll address that in a second. The difference in that is ours is picked up, it's sorted in there. When we dump it out of the truck, the glass goes directly into a container with nothing but glass. The metal cans go in a container with nothing but them, the aluminum cans in another one. And do the plastics, we only collect the ones and twos. So, by doing that, we're only baling those specific things, and then they're going to specific mills. So they stay very clean. Now, You know, the thing about single stream, and what I want to clarify a little bit, is when we've hired a Kessler Consulting, they're coming in and doing, at the direction of an 8-0 council vote, to evaluate all methods to improve our diversion rate, which we consider our recovery rate. We're shooting for that too, because if it's not diverted out of the landfill, then it's not used. So the council tasked us to find a method to try and achieve, within 10 years, 80% diversion rate, which our consultant has said if we manage to do that, we'll be the top diversion city in the United States. You know, some of the others claim higher, but 80 is a lot. I mean, we did a waste comp study when we first started this to see what our contamination, or what areas of other potential recycling we had. It was about 16% is food waste. We also did it with the university. Theirs was almost exactly 16% also. The other plastics that were available that could be recycled through our normal system if they were put in the right bins and actually collected was another 16 to 18%. So we're currently at 20% with the method we do, and 11% of that is the composting we do with our yard waste program and what's dropped off there. And the other 9% is what we collect by 57% of the single homes that recycle. We have about 57% of those voluntary do that and set the bins out. Everyone's given a bin, but we've still got that percentage not doing it. So what we're trying to do is figure out any and all methods to evaluate it. It comes back to the council for them to decide what they want to do. They're going to be a smorgasbord of things for them to choose from. The recycling pilot program we're doing right now, we're doing with several restaurants to do composting. We're testing a new type of composting. We're also doing, with 985 homes in the southeast part of town, we're doing a single stream pilot right now. And why we're doing a single stream pilot, we don't have the ability to do a dual stream pilot because we have our garbage trucks that pick up the garbage bins. We're recycling one of those to do the single stream pickup. Yes, we're taking every material that we currently take in the green bins so that we can compare apples to apples by collecting the same materials. We're not changing that. So by doing that, we hope to get some numbers on that to tell us what we do have. And then they will put in their report what they perceive as would be the increase in diversion once we get that opportunity to see what that is. They'll be coming back to council later in the summer with a report. We'll be taking public input. This is the exact type of group that's interested in recycling. These are the type of people that are stakeholders. You care enough to show up. A lot of people don't. The other big task we're trying to do is we're a college town. There is more apartments in this town than there is single-family residents. And due to that, there's 22,000 apartments. There's no method for them to recycle other than taking it to our 2 drop-off facilities that we have. So what we're looking at is developing a method of doing that. You can't go door to door on an apartment complex and have a truck go by and pick it up with an arm. It's not possible. It's hard for most of the older apartment units in town to have space. Brian has worked hard to get as many of these, we call them battleships, but they're the containers that don't just take glass, but they have a slot for everything. Where our recycling drop-off will have one big truck-sized bin taking cardboard, one taking cans, one taking glass. When we put these in these apartment complexes, we get them in there and we end up, our saying is we haul cardboard and air because the cardboard will fill up and we might not even have the bottom of the other containers covered.
Karen, we'll need to wrap up because we got more questions we want to address.
But I wanted to give everybody an overview of kind of what we're doing, and this will be coming back later to the council to make that decision.
Thank you.
You know, there are so many hospitals, nursing homes, rehabilitation centers, they're using styrofoam, there's no recycling.
That's right.
Can somebody go there and say, we don't want any more styrofoam in Fayetteville, we won.
That's a systemic issue. Yes, sir.
I have a problem with terminology. What do you mean by single stream? The reason I'm saying that is our son and his family live in a pretty affluent suburb of Chicago, and they just put everything, that nothing is divided. Now, it seems to, they just put it in a big plastic bag.
Yeah, it might be clearer to say single bin. What if we just said single bin instead of single stream?
Well, we have a single bin, but it's sorted into
Oh,
dirt.
okay, all right.
But what you're describing is, you're describing single stream. It's that, like, one-arm bandit dumps it all together
Right,
in one compartment in the truck.
But in our understanding, we don't have that in Fayetteville.
Right now, we do not.
And we don't want to have that, right?
Well, most of us in this room
Okay,
don't.
all right. So what is it that you are proposing if this seems to be working pretty well?
Oh,
Well,
the city
you all
is
work
exploring changing our current system to single stream.
In other words, everything?
Yeah, and so you can talk to Terry and
No,
Jeff afterwards.
we're not proposing that. What we did, we got a study with Kessler Consulting, and they consult on how to help cities increase their diversion rates. How do we get more recycled and less thrown away? That's what we want to do, because every ton that we throw away costs us almost $40 to throw it away. If we don't throw away half of it, we save $40 for every ton. And we throw away like 90,000 tons in Fayetteville a year.
Now, I'm understanding you to say that people are proposing.
They're gonna come, no, there's no proposal made. There's no decision been made on anything. The decision makers will be the city, Al Long and the city council members. Once this proposal, they're gonna bring back and propose different ways to do food waste and potentially get 16% out of the waste stream that goes to the landfill. They're gonna propose another way. If you did single stream, it will reduce the stream by this much. If you do something else, if you put more collection sites throughout it, you know, any and all these things you've seen from Portland, Olathe, or any of those things with bins distributed throughout the city will probably be proposed as this will remove this much part of it. Then it's going to be up to the council, based on public support and what they support, on picking that from that smorgasbord and deciding, okay, we want the 5% here because we like the, or we want 15% because we can put dropouts throughout the city. It's going to be at this cost to buy all those bins, buy the trucks and hire the people to empty those. Okay, we pick that. We may pick something else. It may come back and say dual stream is something the community wants. It will. At the end result, when we choose what we choose, we're not advocating anything, but we're going to tell you what each one can provide and at what cost, and what are you willing to pay for as citizens, and what you're not. And then at that point, if you can't reach 80% diversion, then are we going to say, okay, all we can afford is 40%, but that's double what we do now, so that's a large improvement, 100% improvement. So all that will be looked at, and at some point that decision will be made later on in the year. And then it's not going to be something that they make a decision and we do it immediately, because there's a huge infrastructure thing, but there's also, if we can do it with the sidearm trucks, we don't have 10 people out sorting that every day. We are doing it with 5 trucks. We'll do the same as 10, so we have less payroll.
And am I understanding you to say that the problem we're confronting are the expansion of rental units?
Well, that's hard because we currently do not
But you
recycle
don't-
in
we just don't
multifamily. We're trying to come up with a way to do that. Generally, it's easier to do it with single stream than it is because you can't get in front of every home and pick up an
And
individual
single stream
bin.
means single bin in this case.
Which
Like
would
you have a
be-
garbage can now that we pick up.
Thank you.
You would pick it up another can similar in size also. A lot of times you'll have a big recycling bin and a small garbage can.
Okay, ready, question in the back again?
Yes, my name's Alan, I'm on the Fayetteville City Council. I just had a question about, Terry brought up Kessler Consulting, and you've given us some great information tonight, I really appreciate all of that. How much information have you been able to share with Kessler so that y'all can collaborate collaboratively come up with the right suggestion?
I don't know that we've had any contact with Kessler, Michelle, no. No, we haven't, so,
That was not the, that was not the impetus for this.
right, yeah.
We're providing all the data of what we're collecting and shipping to Ripple now. They will be provided all that information on what we currently do in the current methods. So, that will be done before they report back to us.
Okay.
Yes, Tesla had all the information based on what they currently get from us now in the first collection system.
And just to be clear, we'd be happy to talk with them if somebody wants to call us and get more information, talk more in depth about our system or whatever, we'd be happy to talk to them. Okay, yes, sir.
Well, the whole point of recycling is to recycle. It's not
Yes.
about how much comes through the door, it's about how much gets recycled and what comes through the door. So I think it's
Exactly.
very important for this company that's going to be advising our city
Yeah.
to know what you know. I mean,
So one of the things that happens here in recycling with glass specifically, in single stream programs, there's a credit that some of these MRFs get for what's called alternative daily cover. And they've defined that as what do they call that, a beneficial use. But what it means in practice is that the glass fraction with, this mix that you saw down here, that would end up taking another truck to the landfill that might be used to make road beds or to cover the day's waste to make so it doesn't blow around. So that's alternative daily cover, and that sometimes gets defined as diversion, and but it's not recycling. No, it's not recycling because it's not going back to a new product. And I said it before, but for glass, going back to a new product is where most of the benefits are, because when you melt the glass, it melts at a lower temperature, you save energy, and you save greenhouse gas emissions. So that's really what it's about for glass. Yes, ma'am?
So I'm wondering, does Ripple Glass actually at least break even or make money?
So my goal when I did all the research for the business, my goal was to see if we could design and operate a process that would make a sustainable glass recycling business. And by sustainable, I meant economically sustainable, not sustainable in, other terms, but economically sustainable, without any inputs from any other government entity or anything else. So I'm happy to say that we're 6.5, almost 7 years into it, and we're still standing and we're making a little bit of money. None of us are stuffing our pockets with money, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to make sure we could pay our bills and provide a service to the community that was so desperately needed in Kansas City. We found since that there are several areas around our region that needed this service as well. They needed a sustainable market for their glass material, not one that's here today, gone tomorrow, back again the day after, not one of these, but something they could rely on. And something that people could build programs on, and for, there's very low profit margin in glass. The glass is heavy, it's not worth a lot of money, so it's all about efficiency and the systems that are handling it. So that's what we're about. So again, we're happy to say that we're going. Okay, another question right here.
I'm just curious if any of the cities that you've looked at or studied use any kind of incentivization to increase the participation rate in recycling, such as, if we only have 37% of people that are using the recycling container in Fayetteville, wouldn't there be a higher trash rate or a reduced trash rate for people that are recycling, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's something that really has to go back to a partnership with the city to talk about incentive programs and ways to do that. Now, something that we do, and we're working on in Kansas City, is trying to incent people to bring more glass to our systems. And we haven't figured out what the right formula is yet, but it's something